Now, SQL Server transactions are essential for maintaining database integrity, especially when performing operations that involve multiple steps or changes to the database. Now, a transaction is a sequence of operations performed as a single logical unit of work. If all the operations in the transactions are completed successfully, then the transaction is committed and all the data modification uh, are permanently applied to the database. So if any operations within the transaction fails, the entire transaction is rolled back and the database state is returned to what it was before the transaction started. All right, suppose we are managing the employees table and then we need to perform a series of updates, perhaps transferring an employee to a new department and maybe adjusting a salary. So we can do something like a begin a transaction, begin transaction, begin transaction, and then so step one, we want to update the employees department, update the employees um, department. So that's the first thing that we're gonna do. So we say update employees and then set department. Set department to IT, where first name is, I think we deleted that person. I just want to, sorry guys, I just want to check quickly what do we have here from employees. I just want to see which people we have here. So we've got, let's say Alice Smith. We want to transfer Alice to IT. Oh, who, let's take George O'Malley, which doesn't have a department. So we set George O'Malley, where first name is George. Her first name is George, and maybe a last name is O'Malley. Just want to check how we type that again. O'Malley. Let's just copy this. O'Malley, like this. All right. So that's the first thing that we want to do. And then step two, let me just write there. Step two, we want to update the employee salary. So update the employee's salary. Now we'll say update employees set salary to 70,000, where first name and last name is George O'Malley. So assuming that operations are successful, then we're gonna commit the transaction. Commit a transaction. So if either update fails, for instance, if maybe there's no employee named named George, then neither change is applied. and you might choose to actually roll back. Okay, so now just think of a transaction like baking a cake. I know this is a silly example, but just think of it as baking a cake, which involves several steps: mixing the ingredients, pouring the batter into the pan, and baking. So if any of the steps fails, say you forget to add eggs, or the oven doesn't work, you can't really complete the cake. And you wouldn't proceed as if you had. So in the database terms, rolling back a transaction is like deciding not to bake the cake at all if you realize a mistake was made at any step, ensuring that you don't end up with half-baked uh, result. And then committing a transaction is like successfully baking the cake and serving it. So you've completed all the steps without any issues, and the result, which is the baked cake or the database changes in our case, is now permanent and is now made available to everyone to enjoy. Now, rolling back is recognizing a mistake in baking process and deciding not to proceed further, maintaining the status quo as if you hadn't started baking yet. For the database, it means undoing any changes made during the transaction and returning to initial state before transaction begin. So transactions, they just ensure that your database operations are always complete and accurate, just like ensuring that your cake is baked perfectly every time, or not at all if anything goes wrong. So rather than presenting a flawed result.